We have reached the appointed time. This is a meeting to scrutinize 3 pieces of subsidiary legislation relating to over-the-counter derivative transactions. We need to elect a chairman. Please nominate a candidate. A valid nomination must be made by one member and seconded by another member. And also the member so nominated has to accept the nomination. Nominations? I nominate Mr. Ng Liang Seng. Well, I accept the nomination. Do we have any seconder? I don't second anyone. Can we do it without any seconder? Let me ask the clerk. Can we have the same member also be the seconder? We need another one.
Well,
if there's no seconder, according to the clerk, we can't do it.
Can
you second the nomination, Chairman? Mr. Ng? Do we have any precedent that the candidate is also the seconder? No? Okay.
好，即係秘書已經解釋咗，係接受提名嘅人係。
Well, according to the clerk, the nominee cannot be the seconder, and of course we cannot have the same member being the nominator and the seconder. May I nominate Mr. Christopher Chow? Do we have a seconder?
你接唔接受？
我唔接受。Do you accept it? No. No.
仲有冇其他
？Maybe I can nominate Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Okay. Do you second that? Do you accept that, Mr. Sin? He need to think it over. Okay. Give him a moment.
我接受啦。
I accept. Mr. Christopher Chung, do you second that nomination? Okay. If there's no other nomination, okay, I'll hand over the chair to Mr. Sin.
辛苦你啊，辛苦。我哋而家請官員入嚟啊。
Please invite the officials to join us. This meeting is about 3 pieces of subsidiary legislation. We have from the FSTB, Ms. Ada Chan, Principal Assistant Secretary. I won't introduce the full team. Please refer to the attendance list. Ms. Chan. The speaker's not coming through. Over to you, Ms. Chan. With regard to the 3 pieces of subsidiary legislation regarding over-the-counter derivative transactions, we have already sent to members electrical brief. In the 2008 crisis, OTC, over-the-counter transactions were found to be problematic. Therefore, the G20 countries decided to take forward the reform. And that's why in 2014 we introduced the as Securities and Futures Amendment Bill, it was passed into law by this Council. So this is the Securities and Futures Amendment Ordinance. Under the framework of this ordinance, we can implement measures in relation to rate reporting and record-keeping obligations. In the first phase of the implementation, and that is in dispatch of subsidiary legislation, we are going to implement responsibility on reporting and record-keeping obligations, and also the overall framework. The subsidiary legislation will take effect in phases. For the three pieces of subsidiary legislation, the first one is Securities and Futures Amendment Ordinance 2014 Commencement Notice. The 10th of July 2015 will be the commencement date. The second piece of subsidiary legislation is the reporting and record-keeping obligations rules. And the detailed requirements are set out in the rules. And the third one is the Securities and Futures Stock Markets, Futures Markets, and Clearing Houses Notice. The notice take out the areas that are exempted. Now let me talk about brief members on the reporting obligations. What are the reportable transactions? In the initial stage, we should cover foreign exchange derivatives, including the non-deliverable forwards and also the interest rate swaps. They account for over 90% of the OTC derivatives market in Hong Kong. And what are the entities that will be required to submit the reports? We will cover authorized institutions, approved money brokers, and licensed corporations. And if they act as counterparties or they trade for an affiliated entity, they also have to make reports. And there's also the need to report on central counterparties. And also if there are persons recognized for doing the electronic transactions, and they are the central counterparties in the rules. In due course, we are going to have another piece of subsidiary legislation dealing with this. So on this particular aspect, it will not take effect now. And then also the reporting, the information to report. And on the whole, they are required to report new transactions after the commencement date, i.e. after the 10th of July. And secondly, transactions which have been entered into but have not been completed, because it takes time to close certain transactions and which are outstanding. Historical transactions may be outstanding, and they have to report that any subsequent events relating to transactions, and we are talking about a material change, terms of the transaction, partial terminations, and so on and so forth. The information to be reported is set out in Schedule 1 to the reporting rules, such as time, amount, date, and so on and so forth. To avoid different rules which would be in conflict, so we provide certain exemptions. There are two examples. If the authorized institutions and so on and so forth have conducted in Hong Kong on behalf of an affiliate, and if the affiliate has already reported the transaction, then these entities would be deemed to have satisfied the reporting obligation. In other words, no duplicate reporting is required. Second exemption, if the entity is small and they are not active participants in OTC markets, they will be exempted. The details are set out in the rules. This is a new regulatory system We are going to offer concession periods and grace periods. The reporting entities will be given 6 months of concession periods so that they can get prepared or get their system prepared, and then there will be another 3 months of grace period to report any outstanding or historical transactions. So this will allow them sufficient time to make reporting, to meet reporting obligations. To tie in with the arrangement, we also have imposed a mandatory record-keeping obligation so that Hong Kong MA and SF&C can monitor and the compliance. So the reporting entities have to keep documents and prove that they have complied with the reporting obligations. The entities will have to keep the necessary compliance record for 5 years or up to the completion of transactions. Let me now talk about definition of OTC. That is in relation to the notice. The term OTC and also the over OTC derivative regulation system would involve products that are typically negotiated bilaterally between counterparties directly, and that is not through any exchange, but not products that are traded on prescribed stock or futures market. And we have already taken out all the products traded or on our stock or futures market. And this notice aims at handling stocks, exchanges, and futures markets and products in those markets out of Hong Kong. That's all by way of my introduction. Members, questions or comments? Mr. Ng Liang Sing. Thank you, Chairman. I propose that we should consult the public. Although in paragraph 6, in 2014, from January 2014 to April, there was a public consultation by the Hong Kong MA, and it said that the respondents reacted positively. But we don't have a list of the parties consulted, and there's not much information. So, Chairman, do we need to have a public hearing, or should we consider handling public consultations through other means? Other members, any proposals? Mr. Christopher Zhong? Well, in the first instance, you are going to the non-delivery futures and so on, and interest rate swaps only. Are you going to cover other products, and do you have a timetable? Ms. Chan, on public consultation. Maybe I can ask Hong Kong MA. Mr. Ho from Hong Kong MA to say something about it. The consultation exercise was an extensive one. And then I can also ask Mr. Du to say something about SF&C's work in that regard. Thank you. When we issued the public consultation document, the same document was sent to the entities and organizations in the industry. We sent it to the Hong Kong Association of Banks and also the Treasury Services Association and some users of different markets and representatives of such users as well, such as some corporate treasuries service, some associations representing corporate service treasury services providers. Most of the responses we receive are supportive of the reporting obligations, mainly that this is already something implemented internationally. The reporting obligations would require authorized institutions, banks, to report OTC transactions, and the criteria. The reporting criteria are in line with what are adopted internationally. So we have not received opposing views. Of course, some would like us to help them make some adjustments on details, technical details, such as the concession period and the grace period. In the final report, we have already taken on board such views on technical problems.
Well, for the expansion of scope of areas under the reporting applications, we have begun our work. Our next step of work will be to include the ISF and IRS and NDF. So we will cover other derivatives later on, and other derivatives related to stocks, and also the derivatives related to credit lending. So in the coming 6 months, we will carry out a public consultation, and we hope that by 2016, in the middle of next year, we can implement the new arrangement. I'd just like to handle the public hearing ideas by Mr. Ng. Yes, I just then heard that you said that the Association of Banks and other associations have been consulted. I didn't hear the whole list, but I'm sure that the government tried to include all the major parties, and you said that there was no particular strong opinion against the plan because they understood that it's something that has been implemented internationally. So we need to look at the whole picture, of course. But my question is, if there's a need, technically, will there be a need for, for public consultation on the technical size of things? For example, assistant support, the time needed for preparation, or even staff support. Do you think there's a need to have a hearing on the technical aspects of things? On the whole, of course, I would not object to the fact that you already carried out the consultation and then there have been overall support for the idea. May I ask what the commencement date is? July 10th. And I think we need to ask the Secretariat, do we have time for public hearing? I think we need to extend the period. Can the Secretary inform us, please? Yeah, Chairman. The subsidiary legislation actually has been extended to July, the council sitting on July 8th. So if we are to amend the subsidiary legislation, the period for notice will be up to June 30th. So the time is quite tight because on June 30th we are expected to give written notice of CSAs. So I think maybe they wouldn't be able to achieve much before then. But do we need to hear public views? So far, I haven't heard any clear voices, strong voices from my constituency. But can the Hong Kong Monetary Authority represent the sector? Can the Monetary Authority tell us, whether you think that the sector won't see the need for public hearing? If you're firm about that, I wouldn't actually obstruct the commencement date of the subsidiary legislation. I think, Mr. Ng, I think whether we do it or not is really up to our subcommittee. So what do you think? My view is very clear. I'm more inclined towards having a public hearing, but time is tight, very tight. Well, if we were to have a public hearing, of course, we need to find out the time. Next week will be very busy, and it will be too rushed into having next week either. So maybe 22nd? 22nd around that day, maybe. I don't know what your schedule is like. 24 to 26 will be usually busy with the other electrical business. There wouldn't be time during that period for public hearing. 22nd, I can find a time slot 4:30. I think it may clash on that day with a AJLS panel meeting. Well, if there are only 3 of us, but we can't have 2. We have to have a quorum. You can't have just 2 members present. Maybe if not that date, then 25th. I'm not sure what will be happening in electrical on the 25th. 25th, 26th, well, may have to be extended. 24th, 23rd, I mean. The establishment subcommittee will have a meeting at 8:30. How about in the afternoon then? 4:30? Is that okay for all of you? I can make it. Well, okay, 23rd on that day, and 4:30 in the afternoon we'll have a public hearing. That's the plan. Just then, Mr. Ho mentioned the names of some organizations. Our secretary can inform them by writing to see if they can make it, if they want to make it for the hearing. If they can't come that day, then we'll see who others we can invite. But they're welcome to come. Okay, so on the 3 subsidiary legislations, any questions, follow-up questions? Christopher Zhang, I'd just like to ask about whether the government has consulted the sector on impact on costs for prescribed persons, and also found that the government in recent years have introduced a number of policies to comply with international standards at the expense of the interests of people operating in the market. So would the government provide some sort of assistance for those people affected, or subventions? Ms. Du? Yeah, Ms. Chen, as I said, in order to reduce the cost of compliance, we have offered some exemptions. That is for affiliates they could be spared with duplication of reporting, and small scales companies, they also be given exemptions. And in our reporting obligations, we've stated that as the counterparty, all actually, if the total sum of the nominal value does not exceed $13 million, there can be exemptions. And we have actually taken into account the cost of compliance for the sector. And with the exemption, a small number of small-scale organizations would be spared. Actually, a smaller size organization would be spared the obligation of reporting. Any follow-up questions? After the new legislation comes into effect, will the government report to electrical on a regular basis on how things are in the future? Yes, Ms. Chen. As we said that there might be the inclusion of new products later on under the regulatory regime. So we do expect to come back to electrical in due course. First of all, we will carry out another round of public consultation, for example, on the clearing and types of products to be included. And then we'll come back to the panel concerned in electrical, And for the subsidiary legislations, if there are to be any changes, we need to come back to the relevant panel and report back to that members the progress made. I've got a question. Now you have 3 notices. For the first one, for the first notice, you have the name of Chen Kakun, the Treasury Secretary, okay, Professor K.C. Chen, as the person signing off at the bottom of the document. So where would the Financial Secretary be the person signing off the document? I think looking at the 2014 Futures and Securities Amendment Ordinance, it empowers that the Treasury Secretary to actually decide on the commencement date of the subsidiary legislation. Under the Securities and Futures Ordinance, actually the arrangement for other provisions are similar. So we're just trying to comply or to be consistent with other provisions under the S&F Ordinance. So any other questions? If not, then we need to go to the clause-by-clause scrutiny now. I don't object to have it now, do the scrutiny now, but you normally, public hearing, normally we'll have the scrutiny after public hearing is held. But if we have the public hearing is cancelled, then, well, still we may receive some written submissions, I think. So, Chairman, you may make the final decision. I'm more inclined towards, if we have enough time, to have the public hearing first or receive submissions first before we come to the stage of clause-by-clause scrutiny. But if we don't have time, then, well, I think time is really tight. We don't have much time for meetings now. On July 8th, if we can't finish it, then the July 8th deadline won't be met. And after we've met on 22nd, we may only have time for half or one whole meeting. So well, I think let's do it now. If there are any problems, we can always come back to the text of the legislations. We have all the government representatives with us anyway. Let's look at notice 95. Ms. Chen, please. Yes, the first notice is the commencement notice. As I said earlier, this regulatory system will be introduced in phases. The first stage will be the provision on the keeping obligations, record keeping, and the overall framework. So under this commencement notice, we will stipulate the provisions that will come into operation on the specified dates. A, Part 1, and the name of the commencement date of the notice. B, sections 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 provides for the regulatory framework. The provisions will include section 21, 27, 78, and so forth. So these provisions will be made applicable to derivatives, over-the-counter derivatives. And section 9 relates to some definitions. At this stage, the definitions to be effective include reporting obligation, record keeping obligations, definition of specified OTC derivative. And then there's also a new sections 101B and 101E on the reporting and record keeping obligations. The new section of 101F relates to the contravention of the reporting obligation and record-keeping obligation. 101G also relates to the same things, and 101H refers to the exemptions from the reporting obligation and record-keeping obligation. And section 101I relates to guidelines exemptions, and 101L, M, and P has new sections. And from paragraph P2R indeed include investigations and penalties and so forth. So I'm not going into the detail. S to V refers to sections 52 in the amendment, which relates to amendment in Schedule 1, which covers the interpretations and general provisions.
W 同埋
And we move on to W and X. This is about Schedule 5 of the Amendment Ordinance, regulated activities. These provisions, which are to commence, would make Schedule 5 clearer. These are general provisions, so they are not exactly related to just OTC market. In the 2014 Amendment Ordinance, apart from OTC derivatives, there are also general amendments. So here we set out the relevant sections. Section 53. Section 54 is about the appeal tribunal, SNF appeal tribunal. So this particular section is about the general framework, and also parts 3, 5, and 6. Part 3 is about part 3 of SFO. This is to tie in with the measures to regulate OTC market. Part 5, the handover obligation for the market misconduct. So this is about the power to put a charge on the proceeds of market misconduct, and so on and so forth. And then this proposal is made in line with the task force against money laundering. And Part 6, consequential amendments. This is about the notice in 2012. That was a provisional measure. We don't need to keep it now. Therefore, we're going to repeal it. Questions?
法律顧問有冇問題？如果冇咧，我哋就完成呢一部分。我哋落去第二。
All right, we move on to the next one. Next notice. This is about Part 1, preliminary. Definition, interpretation of the rules, etc. Section 1, or Rule 1, commencement date, that is the 10th of July 2015, bracket 2, Rules 15 about central counterparties is not yet in effect. And 2, interpretation. I will be talking about the relevant terms. And also 3, exempted persons, especially the subsection 2, 3.2 actually I've read out. If the sum of the notional amounts of outstanding OTC derivatives transactions does not exceed $30 million US dollars. So this is to examine smaller players. And then other subsections are the more details. 30,000 US dollars. On what basis is it set? I know it it's arbitrary, whatever figure you come up with. I'll ask Mr. Ho to explain. Thank you for your question, Chairman. $30 million US. Is first of all is the notional value of the contracts. We have surveyed the market and among the active OTC participants and organizations and entities, most of them would be over this amount. But for smaller banks, smaller financial institutions, when they need to do some hedging, they may be in this market. According to the information we've got, most of the smaller banks will be exempted if we adopt this line of $30 million US. As Ms. Chen has told you, we have to look at the compliance costs and the balance has to be struck between the costs and compliance with international standards. We believe that this line is appropriate. This will be able to enable us to exempt most smaller institutions. How many participants will be exempted if the line is drawn at $30 million US in percentage terms? How many active participants are there in the market? And what do you think that this would, how many would be exempted? Well, this is really a moving target. With changing times, we may have smaller participants withdrawing from the market. So this figure may drop for smaller participants, but smaller participants may increase their level of participation and they would go beyond the $30 million US level. So it's difficult to put a percentage or a fraction to this. We know that international banks who are active participants. But what about historical data? You must have make an assessment. Let's say this takes effect on the 10th of July, and in that particular situation, in the first and second quarter, we're not looking into the future. What kind of exemption levels are we going to expect? One of the factors that we consider in drawing this line is to achieve an objective that most of the activities in the market will be covered by the regulation system. If you ask, according to preliminary data, how many institutions would be exempted or covered, we don't have any figure with us. We can supply further information after the meeting. But quite honestly, if you exempt a lot, you will not be able to grasp the real situation. And if you exempt only a few, then the exemption is not very useful. But you have the dilemma: if you do not impose the reporting obligations, you get no information. I think Mr. Christopher Chung asked a similar question. Please give us the information next time. Please continue. 4. Rule 4. AIs, prescribed persons in AIs and so on and so forth, which are not exempted. When prescribed persons would be regarded as having conducted transaction in Hong Kong on behalf of affiliate. This is about interpretation. Interpretation in Rule 4 would help us understand the exemption in Rule 17 and Rule 18.
咁之後咧就係第5、6條啦。第5、6條咧就一併嚟講咧，其實咧
Rule 6 says out who are persons specified as prescribed persons for record-keeping obligation. In Section 101A of the Ordinance, under prescribed person, we have already designated such specific prescribed persons. And under A4, there are other prescribed persons. And here we set up that they are the central counterparties and those involved in automatic transaction systems. And also the 7 transactions that specify OTC derivatives transactions for purpose of reporting obligation. And we are going to specify the product types, and we'll come to that later. Part 2. This is Learn Sing. I have some questions. It's a report and record keeping obligations. A number of provisions are about transaction information. The obligation on record keeping and reporting is onerous. For example, in 2,
該項交易和該項交易所涉及的人的
and they are talking about information and particulars relating to the transaction, and the bracket including information and particulars relating to a subsequent event. What do you mean subsequent event? How far away, how far off into the future? How far into the future are we talking about in relation to a subsequent event? In the ordinary case, once the transaction is completed, it's over. But we don't know whether there will be any follow-up to that. So would there be a clear-cut end to the process? Otherwise, how will one know when the information, or for how long the information has to be kept? And then there's an electronic reporting system. Means the electronic system operated on behalf of the MA for submitting or receiving reports. This is about receipt of reports. Have you learned from other parties concerned that their system is sufficient to send or to submit the reports? And if the system cannot receive the report, do you blame the one who submits the report? And if it is a problem with the receiving end, so how are you going to adjudicate whether it's the fault of the one submitting the report or not? Let's deal with the part on transaction information first. I'll defer to Mr. Ho. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ng. In the interpretation section, it's mentioned that what is meant by subsequent events. If I may use an example to illustrate, in a contract for OTC derivative product, it may include a term that is callable. One of the parties can exercise an option to call it and to withdraw or to terminate the transaction. This is a subsequent event that would affect the contractual obligations of the parties concerned. I think this is very clear to those in the industry, in the market. If you have a swap agreement, and if you will have to change the terms, This is also a subsequent event in the eye of the participants. So the major principle involved is that it would involve a change to the economic value. There's nothing about subsequent event in Schedule 1. Do we have anything about subsequent event in Schedule 1?
有關條件
咁啊，或者我哋
你有包括槓桿交易嘅，會唔會槓桿？
What about leverage transactions? Would it involve a change in a subsequent event? To follow up on the first question, in the interpretation you have subsequent event.
冇，你係咪有定冇？我唔肯。
What about Schedule 1? I'm not sure. Part 4 offers some details, but we don't have the term subsequent event. Well, it's in 6. Information related to subsequent event includes such and such. It's page 25. 25, 6. Page 25? Relevant information. So we have this term, subsequent event, the date, the type of event. But what will be covered usually by subsequent event?
I think you need to make it clear. Can you look into that again? And maybe discuss with the relevant organizations and try to get a consensus with them. Otherwise, if there is, unclear information here, then some organizations may have to bear the responsibility unfairly. Let me supplement, Chairman. Subsequent event, in different types of derivatives contracts, they could cover or mean different things. For each type of contract related to derivatives, the master agreement concerned used in the market should have stipulated what it means by subsequent event. So our approach is that in our trade repository template, in the form, already there are information on under what types of contracts, what would be considered subsequent events for which information would be required. So it's stipulated in contracts what constitutes subsequent events. So if there's no such definition in the contract, then you would not penalize any institution on the basis of this legislation, because you're sure that in contracts there would be a provision concerning the actual coverage of a subsequent event. Yes, in the master agreement there is a clear definition of subsequent event. So if that's clear enough, and then people can be referred to the contract, then that should be something that I would accept. As for the system, of the person sending the information and the party receiving it, so what is your understanding? Do you think the provisions now are adequate? The electronic reporting system. On the data template in the system, it is in line with international standards. As for the operation of the actual system, of course, we would require the party concerned to report to designated system. Previously, we had a mid-term reporting obligation that is under the banking regulations. We expect the main participants, namely banks, to submit to us OTC derivatives, particularly in relation to IRS and NDF, to submit information to the repository. So banks have been experienced in using this electronic system, so I don't see any problem with that. Any follow-up questions on that thing? Okay, that's fine with me. I'm sure banks will know how to deal with it. As for other parties, whether you have talked to other financial institutions, and are you aware that you think the other financial institutions have thoroughly checked their systems to make sure that they work? If you have enough time available, of course, I would not have any objection if you think that the systems currently running are okay. Any other follow-up questions? Nothing. I think, have you answered, Mr. Ng, you think you're pleased with the answers you got? Well, I think if they're concerned, they know what I'm aware of, and then I have no problem with that. Okay, Ms. Chen, please continue. Part 2, reporting obligation. It includes 3 divisions. Division 1 covers paragraphs 9 or section 9 to 11. It relates to when reporting obligation rises, and let me go through section 9 with you. That is a described person that is required by Rule 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or 15 to report a specified OTC derivative transaction to the monetary authority, must report the transaction to the monetary authority. Section 10, 11, 12, 13 requires lines AI, AMB, and LCs to report certain types of specified over-the-counter derivatives transactions. So for those organizations mentioned, for counterparty transaction, they need to report the type of products concerned, and also they must actually, if it is a counterparty to the transaction and transaction is recorded in the form of an entry in the books of a local branch of the person, then they need to report. Or if the institution concerned is a counterparty to the transaction and the transaction is recorded in the form of an entry in the books of the principal place of business outside Hong Kong of the person or branch of the person, then reporting is needed. So I don't quite understand section 10, subsection 3. Subsection 3 under 10 in relation to reporting by licensed corporations. What does that mean there? It actually covers who are the exempt persons, and actually it says that just then we mentioned the exemption criteria of value of $13 million US. And here it says that Rule 1A does not apply to a prescribed person. That is an exempt person in relation to the specified OTC derivative transaction. Okay, please carry on. From section 12 to 15, they are the provisions related to various types of institutions. And Section 16 mentioned that the reporting application applies even if counterparty or transaction into outside Hong Kong. Division 2 deals with the circumstances in which reporting obligation is taken to have been complied with. That is, the affiliate has reported a certain transaction and subsequent events. Well, as I said, as I mentioned, we do have some measures in place to help the sector comply with the regulations. So Section 17, 18 actually are exactly related to that. That is, licensed corporations, authorized financial institutions, or approved money brokers taken to a reporter entering into a transaction if a affiliate has reported. That's one circumstance. Or this actually does away with the need to, duplicating the reporting effort. So how do they actually file a report? Do they have to report on a daily basis, real-time or hourly basis? How does it work, the reporting system work? For the OTC derivatives, well, you can see from the name OTC, right? But the nature of that is a point-to-point transaction done through negotiations on the price agreed by the two parties, and being aware of the risks concerned. So that's some kind of point-by-point result of point-by-point negotiation. It's not an automated trading process, but when it comes to reporting, for particularly large financial institutions, it will be an automated trading service because there will be a backup staff there who would actually confirm the agreements made at the counter and put that into the company's system. So the licensed corporations or bankings would have their own internal systems that can make changes required, and also to provide information required in contracts and have them uploaded onto the reporting system. So the way the reporting process operates is indeed, the actual operations is more of an IT, issue. So I haven't looked clearly at the details, but what are the exact requirements? Would it be a reported on the batch by batch basis, or any time frame within which they need to submit a report? Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. The requirement is T+2. That is, within 2 days after the transaction happens, the details have to be reported to us. This is made with consideration of time lag. Sometimes, we talk about a global market. Some parties may be in Europe or the US. So when the whole transaction is finished and when our backup staff have confirmed the transaction per se, there's time needed for the exchange of information. Therefore, we do have this provision for 2 days after the transaction is made. So within that 2 days, the confirmed transaction information will be reported via the electronic system. So T+2 meaning the transaction day or the trading day, right? Yes. So during Easter holidays or Qingming public holidays, so what will happen? Well, that could be a delay of 1 whole week. Yeah, in the bonds market or other markets, that could be public holidays there, and that take up a time too. Okay, next member. Section 16. Reporting obligations applies even if counterparty or transactions enter into outside Hong Kong. And Section 18 covers another topic. And in the interpretation, it mentions about the the definition or the provision for subsequent event.
But if the transaction is entered into outside Hong Kong, can the regulator really handle this? That would include transactions not based on Hong Kong law. So that may create problems with enforcement. And have you really considered the different customs of places? Are you sure that you can handle such transactions, such cases smoothly? Let me clarify the scope of this piece of legislation. We target specified persons. As long as one is covered by the definition of a specified person, then the obligation is imposed. And if they use a so-called E-Star, an international template to enter into a transaction with someone outside Hong Kong, and I believe it's based on English law. The law applicable to the transaction agreement is not related to what we require here. If the question is whether we still can require for the compliance of the reporting obligation, the answer is yes, as long as he is a specified person. So he has to do it as long as he is a specified person as defined. $30 million is a notional value.
即係幾耐幾多時間之內嘅3000萬嘅
？What's the span of time that would be covered by the $30 million? Chairman, are you saying that how we set the figure at 30 million? We're talking about the transactions which may not have been completed, outstanding. So at any time, the outstanding value at any time, once it's exceeded, the person will become a prescribed person. Correct. Well, actually, this is about offering the exemption if the value is under $30 million, and there will be no need for doing the system linkage or the submission of information to the database. If the value is close to $30 million, they will have to monitor their position very carefully, because they will know that they would need to do the reporting once it's exceeded. So they would refrain from doing business if the value is close to $20 million. Well, we're not talking about traders, ordinary traders, and they are just doing this for hedging purposes. So they are not going to be having very volatile transaction volume. Other questions? 30 million is the line. When will this limit be applied? Once the subsidiary legislation comes into effect. What was the previous line? average trading volume or what? As Mr. Tu has told you, we look at the outstanding position of a prescribed person to see if it's over $30 million or whether the exemptions applies. We have a brief discussion on the factors that we considered in drawing the line of $30 million. First, we want to cover the majority of trading activities, especially those by big players. Second, we want to allow some room for participants which are just doing this for the risk management. In order to reduce compliance costs, we exempt them from the reporting obligations. That's how we came up with this limit of $30 million. We disclosed this to the industry during the consultation, and they were supportive. $30 million is not a big sum, or $30 million US dollars.
2億1啫嘛，2億2千萬都。
OK， 繼續啦。而家我哋睇第。
Let's start with Division 2. Division 2.
就係指明匯報責任視為已被遵守嘅情況。
And when reporting obligation is regarded to have been complied with, and that is if the reporting has been made by an affiliate. So this is to avoid duplicate reporting, as I've explained. Division 3, 19 to 26, Rules 19 to 26. And that is how to comply with the reporting. They are about how to comply with reporting obligations. And also we have definitions on concession period and grace period. Let me repeat. The reporting entity will be given 6 months of concession period to make sure that they can set up the necessary system to link up with the database and to make the reporting to the Hong Kong MA. And then after 6 months, there will be another 3 months of grace period. So altogether, there are 9 months to cover historic transactions. What's the difference between the concession period and the grace period? So there's no need to submit anything in that period. So is there any difference? The concession period is provided to allow them to link up the system, to do some change to the IT system. So no reporting is required in the concession period. As we have said, reporting obligations are not just imposed on the new transactions. They also apply to the outstanding transactions. So we give them more time to catch up. So the grace period is provided to report information on historic transactions. So altogether there are 9 months. 6 months of concession period plus 3 months of grace period. After the commencement of law, there's nothing required in 6 months. After 6 months, they have to report information on new transactions. Yes, they will require to report information on new transaction based on the T+2 basis, and then they will have to provide information on outstanding or historic transactions in another 3 months. But actually, many institutions will start to do this before the concession period. We just provide the 2 periods for more preparation time. Okay, let's continue. Rule 20. Transaction information to be submitted to MA. A prescribed person that is required by Rule 9.1 to report specified OTC derivative transaction to the MA must submit the transaction information for the transaction to the MA in accordance with this division. More details will come later. What do you mean by the database? Well, the database is established by the Hong Kong MA for the purpose of receiving information submitted. Hong Kong Trade Repository Hong Kong Trade Repository is under CMU of Hong Kong MA. So we are referring to that system. According to the law, the information is required to be submitted to Hong Kong MA. So this particular repository will be receiving the information. So the law says MA, but the system is a Hong Kong Trade Depository. Is it in the law? Well, that's in 21, Electronic Reporting System.
咁不如我講埋下一條啦，就係第21條咧，就係要求咧。
21. The transaction information for a specified OTC derivative transaction that is required to be submitted to the monetary authority under this rule is to be regarded as duly submitted only if it is submitted by means of the electronic reporting system and in accordance with the direction and instructions referred to in sub-rule 2. So is the Hong Kong Trade repository when you refer to the electronic reporting system? Yes. And then there's the 6 month of concession period. 22. For transactions which have been entered into before the first day of the grace period, and that is still invalid, then the transaction information must be submitted not later than the last day of the grace period, and that is before the end of the 9-month period. Provided that the transaction is not yet completed at the end of the grace period. The AI which have submitted the information under the provisional rules would be taken as having complied with the reporting obligations under the new rules. That is in 6. Sub-rule 6. As Mr. Ho has said, according to the banking ordinance, reporting is being carried out by banks. If that's already been done, the bank will be taken or regarded as having submitted the transaction information. All right, let's move on. Next, reporting outstanding transactions where there's no concession period. A person under 23, not later than the last day of the grace period, they will have to report transaction information related to past transactions. And that provided that the transaction has not been completed before the last day of the 9-month grace period plus concession period. 24. This required that in entering or 2 business days after entering into a transaction, there's the reporting obligation to satisfy, and there is T+2 rule.
So this applies to transactions after the concession period, or on the first day, or after during the grace period. This actually covers the T+2 requirement. Okay, no problem. 25th. Reporting subsequent events, that is within 2 days after a subsequent event, the prescribed person should submit transaction information. A prescribed person, when reporting about a OTC derivative transaction, can, in certain circumstances, actually mask some information. So there are circumstances listed here. For example, with agreement from the counterparty, and or when the number of circumstances here. That is, for example, but maybe Ms. Du to explain to us more about, more details here. When we do the market consultation, we found that in some jurisdictions, there may be privacy laws or legislation that actually make it, impossible for the prescribed person to review information of the counterparties. We now have actually, I think we found 18 jurisdictions where this relevant provision on actually masking some particular informations that actually have the same provision. So Singapore and is among the regions with relevant provisions. In the 18 jurisdictions that we've identified, actually the situation is very similar to Singapore and US and Australia. So we've made reference to the provisions in those jurisdictions. Maybe I can give you an example. In Singapore, is banking secrecy law is one such that parties are not supposed to review information about the counterparties. So in Singapore, it is actually going through a process of amending the law. But until the amendments are made, if the counterparties of our bank is a Singaporean bank, it cannot review information about that bank. So if that's the case, then we can offer the exemption under the current provision, sparing the need of the party concerned to review information about the other side. Okay, Nancy? Well, we're talking about, of course, the applicability of some laws. Here, it says that, the party can mask the particulars of the counterparty. And the approval, the right to make approval, lies with the MA, I think. So Is it because maybe the other party is in another jurisdiction, therefore the masking is allowed? That the operator can make the decision itself? I think we need to know what the process is, the process involved. And also in 25th subsection 3, the person is only required to submit the transaction information once for that day, provided that the transaction information submitted incorporates all of the subsequent events. But I'd like to know more details about it. How many times of submissions are expected? If it submits full information once, then wouldn't that be enough? I mean, do you have to specify whether submission should be made once or more than once? Okay, for the first question, let's look at the section 26 first, 1A. That is, if the two requirements are satisfied, then the law applies. That is if what are the requirements? That is, the submission of the counterparty identifying particulars is prohibited under the laws of or by authority or regulatory organization and jurisdiction. And secondly, in the jurisdiction offered to is a jurisdiction designated by the SF&C in accordance with Sub-Rule 3. So we actually have mentioned about the fact that there are 18 jurisdictions which have their own laws and which also have provisions banning the revelation of the particulars of a counterparty. So these are the two conditions or requirements. Chairman, of course, I was referring to the places outside the 18 jurisdictions. If the organization concerned thinks that or receives a request to, for a region that lies outside of the 18 jurisdictions and the constitution concerned thing that is improper to review the particulars of a party and it wants to mask the particulars. So does the institution have the right to make that decision, or does it have to go through some procedures in order to get approval? For example, through the monetary authority or get approval from the MA first? Actually, during our consultation, we mentioned in our summary that if it's an area outside the 18 jurisdictions, it cannot, because of its own thinking, declines to comply. If there is some independent legal opinion that supports the organization's decision, then it can apply for an inclusion of that particular area into our designated jurisdictions. It can apply to SF&C or MA. So it has to make a separate application, for a place to be included in the 18 jurisdictions. Yes, it would need to submit to us the legal opinion that supports its decision. Okay, about my point about 25th. 25th, it concerns subsequent events. I think here it refers to actually, subsequent event will affect the some of the nature of could affect the nature of a transaction, and I'm sure that the MA would have guidelines on what constitutes a subsequent event. I can explain to you by citing an example. Say, someone has changed the notional amount of a transaction, reducing the amount. Then on that day, say if the amount is reduced 3 times a day, then the person involved will only need to report the final amount once. That is the transaction information relating to the last price. It doesn't have to mention that the first time 3 million was reduced to 2 million, then 2 million to 1 million. It will only need to report to us the final amount, that's the 1 million finally agreed upon in the reporting. So there will not be a need for reporting 3 times, but only report on the final outcome. That will be enough. So the transaction information refers to the end of date, something like end of date information, a snapshot of, what you've agreed on. So why don't you specify here the final transaction then? I think we want to, make things easier for institutions because each institution has its own way of reporting. Some may want to report time after time, every time a change is made, but some may want to report the final outcome. So we give them a choice. So my feeling is after reading this paragraph is that it's like, he says that you only need to report once, but why don't you make it more specific? That is, you're expected to report the finalized information, because why don't you put down the final transaction? Well, but indeed there are 2 ways of reporting. Sometimes it's about, the type of events, or the other way is to take a snapshot of the entire process of making a transaction. So if we make it a rule that you only report the finalized amount, then people who used the first approach then may find it difficult because they want to report on a case-by-case basis. But whereas for other people, they may find that reporting on a case-by-case basis would be a cumbersome process. Therefore, we actually try to accommodate people, various participants that are active in the market. Of course, I'm sure there won't be tens of transactions on a day, but there may be a few transactions. So here it says once, one reporting is enough. That may not achieve your, final or arrive at the final position. Well, but I think here it says that 23, subsection 3, the last line says that provided that the transaction information submitted incorporates all of the subsequent events that occur on that day. So if only one report is made, that singular report must incorporate all of the subsequent events that occur on that day. So I'm sure that will include all the information needed. Yeah, so we can report another way. Well, it's all about ID, data, feeding data alone. I don't insist that you need to make a change in the wording, but I'm just saying that my impression was that it's like you can just report whatever you like, just as long as it's done once a day. So if you want to make sure or make it clear to people that you want the finalized information, that might not make it clear. But anyway, okay, next one. Section 26, masking. We covered that, I think. Division 3, or Part 3, list the reporting or the record-keeping obligations. Section 27 stipulates that a prescribed person must, in relation to a specified OTC derivative transaction, keep the record specified in Rule 29 in a manner specified in Rule 30 until no earlier than 5 years after the transaction has matured. I want to find out, but they have to give you the reports and to have it put in the Hong Kong Trade Repository. And does it mean that the party concerned, the persons concerned, also have to keep the record for 5 years? Yeah, but my question is, well, often banks keep records for 7 years. Why is it 5 years now? Is it an international rule? Well, in the beginning, we asked for 7 years But we made a change upon the request of the sector. They wanted to align with the practices in other jurisdictions. Do you mean U.S.? Yes, in other places. 28 states that prescribe persons to keep records even if counterparty or transaction enter into or conducted outside Hong Kong. So it applies to OCD derivative transaction even if the counterparty or more than one counterparty to a transaction is a person outside Hong Kong or the transaction was entered into or conducted wholly or partly outside Hong Kong.
Rule 29, records to be kept by prescribed persons. You may wish to refer to Schedule 2 for details. Page 27 of the Chinese version. It specifies the records, including all agreements, orders, ledgers, confirmations of the transaction, and also payment particulars, margin requirements relating to the transaction, and relevant information.
咁最主要就係呢一啲嘅資料。咁另外咧就係話，如果佢係聘用代理人
And if an agent is hired, then the contract relating to the hire of the agent has to be kept. If it's an exempt person, the relevant information had to be kept.
OK， 繼續啊。
Please continue. Rule 30, manner in which records are to be kept. It must be in a way that is readily accessible, retrievable, that is. Part 4. Rule 31 and Rule 32, subsidiaries specified by MA under certain sections, report and record keeping obligations. For example, if the affiliate has been so specified by MA, there are certain reporting obligations. In the Amendment Ordinance, a corporation set up in Hong Kong must ensure that its subsidiaries, if they are so specified by MA, they will have to report the information on transactions to the Hong Kong Trade the repository. This is in Part 4. At present, MA is of the view that the OTC activities of AIs are not very active, so they are not going to specify any such subsidiaries. So actually no subsidiary has been so specified by MA. How about 30? How long has the information has it got to be kept? 5 years. The time limit is 5 years. It's in Rule 27.
5年。頭先我都問過啦。
That was the subject of a previous question.
之前嗰部，如果冇我哋繼續討論翻第4部啦。
Let's continue with Part 4. Rule 31, we have covered that.
但係而家你話冇呢一個指明叫做
其實係未有。
So no subsidiary has been so specified. Rule 32, if such subsidiaries are specified, then the subsidiaries will have to comply with the relevant obligations as if they are authorized financial institutions incorporated in Hong Kong. So when we apply the obligations, it will be subject to the modifications in this rule, and that is the prescribed persons, obligations, and the authorized financial institutions will be understood in such a manner that they mean the subsidiaries of relevant corporations. Which subsidiaries have you got in mind? Should you wish to specify them in the future? Chairman, many authorized institutions such as banks, larger banks have subsidiaries. So to avoid a situation whereby all the OTC derivatives agreements are enter into under the subsidiaries, then the AIs, the banks, will not be covered by the reporting system. So we just want to avoid loopholes so that banks cannot shift the activities to their subsidiaries. At present, there are no such subsidiaries in the of this nature in the market. All right, Schedule 1, information to be submitted. Part 1, interpretation. Non-deliverable forward, and there's another interest rate swap definition. For example, information on the currency, the floating interest rate, and the MA can also provide definitions through notices. The commencement date is the 10th of July 2015. We have explained the relevant product types in Part 3. If there are no new products, you can add those in the schedule, correct? If there are any amendments, we are going to amend the rules here.
咁當然，如果係要作出呢一方面嘅修訂，我哋就係會。
And of course, we would consult the market and come back to this council should we want to move amendments to the rules. Please continue. Part 4. Transaction information to be submitted to MA, and include the class and product type, product class, product type, dates, particulars of counterparties, confirmation information, clearing information, subsequent event, amount, currency, and so on and so forth. The reference period, interest rate, spread, and so on and so forth. Questions on Schedule 1, if any?
問題我哋睇埋附表2啦嚇。
Schedule 2. When I explain the record-keeping obligations, I have already mentioned some of the sections here. And it's about the information on all agreements, orders, ledgers, confirmation information, and margin requirements, payment requirements, so on and so forth. Next, move on to the next part.
呢一個匯報規則咧就已經係講完㗎啦。
That's the end of this particular set of rules. If we may move on to the last piece of subsidiary legislation, and that is as Securities and Futures, Stock Markets, Futures Markets and Clearing Houses Notice. I don't think we have time for this. This is very long. Actually, it's a table. Okay. Prescribed markets. As I said at the very outset, OTC derivative products do not cover those traded in stock markets, futures markets, or designated clearing houses. So we can the principal ordinance can handle Hong Kong's markets and clearing houses, and this particular notice would exclude similar markets or clearing houses outside Hong Kong, because by definition OTC means outside a market or clearing house. We have consulted the market participants on which overseas stock markets and futures markets have to be excluded. So we have now set out in the form of a list the prescribed markets. For all these prescribed markets, no reporting obligation is required. Yes, for markets listed here, the products and the transactions conducted through these markets will not be covered by the definition of OTC derivative transactions, and they are outside the regulatory system. Legal advisor, you have a question? Members, please note that for this notice, the expression, the style of expression, is that in Section 40, there are 33 market operators, unlike the previous ones in the same notice. For the other ones, they will mention the names. The names will be mentioned. But here we are only talking about any stock markets or futures markets operated by the foreign market operators. And the names of the stock markets or futures markets are not spelled out. Actually, I wrote to the government to ask for an explanation. They have got an explanation. Perhaps they can tell members. Yes, on the 20th of May, we gave a reply to the legal advisor's questions. We note that the legal advisor has relayed our explanation to the House Committee through her report. Maybe I can repeat the explanation here. In this notice, we are identifying the markets through the market operators, and that is not all the markets have a formal or statutory names. So we'll try to refer to these markets by identifying the market operators. In many jurisdictions, they regulate the market operators and the markets. So we list out the markets based on the market operators. For some market operators, they may operate more than one kind of market, and different markets may be subject to different regulatory system. For item 1 to 39 in part 1 of the schedule, they run traditional stock markets and other trading platforms such as multilateral trading systems. At present, the OTC regulatory system only covers traditional markets. So we have to identify some markets through both the names of these markets and also through the market operators. So that's the case in the former sense from 1 to 39. Because for these markets, they only have traditional markets. And then we can identify cover all the markets if we just identify the market operators. All right, questions? If not, then we have completed the cross by cross examination. We're going to a public hearing on the 23rd of June at 4:30, but the clerk has failed to find a venue. I think the clerk would have to sort things out by looking at the diaries of the 3 members concerned, and also to try to find a room for the public hearing. So we don't have any venue for the June 23rd hearing. All right, if there's no further question, we would adjourn now. I'll ask the Secretariat to inform us of the arrangement for the public hearing. We're going to have another meeting anyway, maybe after the public hearing. We'll try to have another meeting, and by that time we should have received the replies from the government. Any further questions? If not, the meeting's adjourned.